Over the years, titles like Redline, Paranoia Agent, and Tatami Galaxy have helped me shape what I look for in a show's visuals and animation. For me, it's not about how shiny a show's visuals are or how fluid the animation is, but rather what it does with them to help convey its atmosphere, story, characters, or message. And I have a lot of respect for experimental titles which succeed in conveying such things in an interesting and unconventional way. An example of this is Kaiba, a psychological sci-fi mystery anime series which was written and directed by Masaki Yuasa. So does this series succeed in using its visuals and animation to help convey its story? Well, I'm here to share my thoughts. My name is Keten, and welcome to my review of Kaiba. The plot takes place in a dystopian world where the ability to store memory data has become possible, allowing people to avoid death by simply moving their memories from one body to another. While this technology may seem good on paper and even plausible with how focused we are on appearance, and of course the fear of death, society has actually crumbled because of it. People are stealing memories or illegally altering them for their own gains. The rich are the only ones who can afford switching to healthier bodies, and the poor are separated from the wealthy, forced to either sell their memories or bodies just to survive, leaving the world in a state where the wealthy live longer and make all the decisions, leaving the system stagnant. Stories about our bodies being nothing but shells to our minds is nothing new, but this series tackles it in a different direction, being a social commentary on how superficially we view ourselves, others, and how the system can so easily use these views to control us. The story explores this wonderfully, having a first half that's fairly episodic where we follow our amnesiac protagonist Kaiba, who wakes up in the middle of nowhere, not knowing anything about himself or the world. He's quickly put on a journey with no real destination, and travels to different planets, witnessing how the technology and system affects multiple people's lives. This narrative allows the series to explore its themes from multiple perspectives, having one-episode characters who, while only having limited time, get enough focus for you to really get to know them and their individual conflicts, allowing for a lot of interesting introspection. I'd like to point out that I'm not a fan of amnesia in stories, since oftentimes it's used to conveniently move the plot along in contrived ways, and can prevent a character from developing, since it's usually more about getting them back to where they were instead of moving beyond that. Luckily, this series avoids those problems completely, and is probably the best use of amnesia I've ever seen. Not only does the amnesia fit with the story's focus on memories and psychology, but Kaiba never conveniently regains or loses memories, and even develops beyond just regaining them. As for the other characters, boy do we get some pretty heavy stories. This series is pretty damn depressing, having a lot of screwed up stuff involving sex, violence, and death happen to our characters, and it doesn't shy away from tragic endings to their arcs either. While it's pretty screwed up at points though, it's never used as cheap shock factor, never going too far that it bends disbelief, but rather just enough to make the world feel more believable and the messages in the series more impactful. As we enter the second half of the series though, it focuses more on the overall plot, and sadly, while it starts pretty interesting, as it goes on, things start feeling pretty rushed. While it holds itself together at first, the final 2 episodes are where things start getting pretty incoherent and even contrived at points. Characters start getting quick backdrops to justify their actions, information starts getting thrown at us really fast to the point it becomes hard to follow, several things don't quite add up or make sense, and while the ending is conclusive and solid, the lead up to it can leave you pretty confused about what just happened. I have to wonder if the series was supposed to be 1 or 2 episodes longer than it ended up being, because with a little extra time, it could have easily smoothed itself out. Maybe they had a deadline, maybe they didn't have the resources, either way it ended up pretty messy. With how rich in themes, character introspection, and world building the series is, it's a shame the last 2 episodes damaged the overall. Even so, with how much there is to get out of it, I can't say the writing is anything short of great, I just wish the finale was a bit more satisfying. The visual design and animation of Kaiba are breathtaking to say the least, and I have a lot to say about it, so bear with me while I gush over Masaki Yuasa's brilliant directing. The first thing you'll notice about this series is its rather cartoony art style, reminiscent of Osamu Tezuka's classic works, and you'd think using such a silly style that was used for kids shows in the past, for such a mature and depressing series wouldn't work at all, but it surprisingly fits the show perfectly. For starters, the style allows the character designs to have a lot of variety to them, coming in all shapes and sizes, and it likes to play with your head a bit, designing characters and animating them in certain ways to give you an impression of what they're like, only to show you there's a lot more to them, and with how easily the characters can simply swap into a different body, it goes along perfectly with the show's focus on how we, as a society, judge ourselves and others based off appearances. On top of that, similar to the world and memory storing technology, the art only seems silly on the surface, but with the disturbing imagery and the empty way certain things are framed, it makes the more cartoony designs come off more as unnatural and ominous, rather than happy or goofy, adding to the unsettling tone to convey that something is wrong. This is helped by the use of color in the series. Not to say any given color necessarily has a direct meaning to it, but I loved how even the brighter colors were kept rather muted, and at times, have gray outlines to suck out the vibrant feelings these colors would usually convey, and combined with the scene composition, which can often have a lot of empty space, helps give off a darker, depressing atmosphere, and I don't think this would have worked as well with any other art style or color palette. Another thing design-wise I need to point out is the world itself. One thing I've grown a bit tired of in futuristic series is the whole Blade Runner look. Not to say I don't like Blade Runner or Blade Runner inspired visuals, and I'm sure it can still be done well, but after you've seen it used over and over, it starts to look a bit uninspired. That's what really helps Kaiba to stick out from other sci-fi series. This has to be one of the most imaginative and surreal worlds I've ever experienced, and the fact that the story takes its time exploring it made it all the more fascinating and alive. The world doesn't look the way it does just to stick out either. There's a real brilliance to how everything looks so bizarre and otherworldly, and it has to do with our protagonist Kaiba. Normally amnesiac protagonists are a bit hard to relate with due to not remembering who they are or what they're doing, but that's what's so great about the world. Buildings, landscapes, and even the designs of objects and appliances that we'd normally recognize suddenly look like nothing we've ever seen before. You're left constantly asking, what is that? Where is this? And what is going on? Which effectively gives the viewer the same line of thinking as the protagonist, who knows as little as we do. The final thing design-wise I have to point out is that there's actually an episode in the middle of the series which has a noticeable drop in budget. Everything looks more rough and ugly, but instead of cutting their losses and doing a standard episode, the staff actually takes advantage of the lower budget, incorporating the uglier design into the story of the episode, focusing on how marketing can construe our view of how people should look and how it can make us mistreat our bodies in response. In terms of animation, like Yuasa's other works, the minimalistic design allows for a lot of fluidity, and it never really drops in quality throughout the whole series besides maybe a scene here or there. The animation allows for plenty of body language, such as the way certain characters walk or move, that give them more personality and can really add to some emotional moments, animating more subtle body motions to help get across certain feelings like fear or joy. It also adds to the more surreal style of the rest of the visuals, animating certain things in very creepy and otherworldly ways that really help make the world feel more alive and all the more bizarre and unsettling. The more surreal designs and animation also help to make any action scenes in the series stand out quite a bit, with a lot of surreal looking weaponry, which, because we have no idea what they do exactly, helps add a feeling of suspense. Moving on to music, it was composed by Kiyoshi Yoshida, and it perfectly fits with the series, having a lot of depressing tracks that have an otherworldly sound to them. It does have some happier tunes as well, though I feel like even those have a sad undertone to them. It can repeat certain songs at times, but it never bothered me because they always fit their scenes wonderfully, and were so pleasant, unique, and really helped to enhance the surreal atmosphere of the series. It's honestly one of my all-time favorite soundtracks.
Once upon a time was there an old and lonely tree. By him folks have come and...
Not just the soundtrack though, but the use of sound in general is excellent, having a lot of quieter moments and bizarre ambient sound effects which, when coupled with the more emptier or bizarre scenes, help to make them more depressing and creepy. The voice acting goes along with this as well, having performances that seem silly at first, but it makes the contrast with the more darker subject matter more emotionally impactful. Though I should point out that the series has a lot of scenes where characters are just talking, discussing their lives and thoughts, and while it's certainly meaningful and gives a lot of insight into their lives and personality, I can see it being a bit boring for some. Honestly though, that's my only real issue with the presentation overall, which seems so small in comparison to just how much this series managed to accomplish, pulling so much meaning and emotion out of such a small budget production, and makes a lot of high budget productions look very empty in comparison. It really goes to show that it's the passion, hard work, talent, and ambition that makes a show's visuals worthwhile, not how much money you can throw at something. Kaiba may be unconventional and even abstract, which may turn some people off, but it also makes the series timeless. This is a series that looks and sounds phenomenal now, and will still look and sound amazing decades in the future. Its presentation is absolutely outstanding. Beyond its noticeably flawed final episodes, Kaiba is an ambitious series with so much passion and talent put into it. It may require a rewatch to get the most out of it, but if you're looking for a more heavy and mature story, and are not turned away by unconventional art styles, Kaiba is a must-watch, and one of the best examples of the infinite potential of animation that the medium has to offer. If you've seen Kaiba, let me know what you think of it in the comments, and let me know if there's an anime you'd like me to review at some point. I hope you enjoyed this review, and I'll see you next time.
Good night, everybody. everybody.